The Force is Mega, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it controls like you've just attended a kegger. It's August 1993, and this is Yesterzine. On this channel, we have twice seen before the greatest magazine of all time by default, Sega Master Force, in that it was the only single format magazine ever for history's greatest console, the Sega Master System. But of course, you exclaim, thinking you're clever. The existence of Sega Master Force in 1993 implies the existence of a Sega Mega Force. You sit back and chuckle to yourself. A joke well made. Well, joke's on you, my friend, because it was actually Sega Force Mega. I bet you feel silly now, Strawman intro construct in my head. It's that 16-bit tone we're focusing on this month as we join it with its first issue, Volume 2, Issue 1, in August 1993. I should explain. In the beginning was Sega Force, and Impact looked and saw that it was good. But not good enough. 2 years in, they split it into the SMS magazine we know and love, but which understandably might have had a limited shelf life in mid-1993, and their forward-thinking Mega Drive tome, 100% dedicated to the Mega Drive and the Mega Drive only. And the Mega CD. And the Game Gear. The bravery of putting all Mega Drive on the cover literally next to the promise of Mega CD coverage has to be respected, but at least there's no viable Mega CD setup that can't also play Mega Drive games, be it the traditional method or the multi-Mega. The Game Gear section is a bit more of a dodge. This was a sneaky little cost save from Impact. Sega Force had covered GG, but it didn't warrant its own magazine, so they covered it in both Master Force and Force Mega. In fact, we don't need to look at those pages in this issue because they are identical to the pages in Sega Master Force, whose first issue we saw a few years back. That's a time saver at least. And we might need it, because there's a lot here. It's movie season at Force Mega, with no less than 7 big movies getting games in or around this time. We, though, will be playing the one they went big on, and also dealing with the TV license where the machine got a bespoke version from a strange place. Elsewhere, Sega Force Mega make a bold prediction about 2025 we are now in the position to evaluate. We get to the bottom of how Sega thought they could do VR in 1993, and Sega Force Mega attempt to make a video game. First though, a superstar stumbles, for possibly the first time. There are many movie games in this issue. My initial notes for the episode name 7 of them, and thus Impact have a choice. Which of these huge movies do they put on the cover? Which do they cover across 6 pages? Which do they go to presumably quite serious lengths to bag an interview with its standout main star for? When you're launching a new magazine, these decisions could potentially be make or break, and in that respect, you go for the safe bet. You go for the director of Die Hard. You go for the most anticipated film of the summer. You go Arnold freaking Schwarzenegger. You go for The Last Action Hero. It'd sure be a shame if the film was considered a box office disaster, getting spanked by Jurassic Park in week 1, and then dropping like a stone after that so much that in its second week it was beaten by Dennis the Menace, and not even the good one. It'd be even worse if the film got a critical kicking to the point it carries a Metacritic of 44, a score beaten by all but less than 10 of the near 1,000 releases on PlayStation 5. Still, the video game must have been better and done better than that when it was released. You may have seen where this is going. We don't know, because on Mega Drive at least, it wasn't released. I say Mega Drive for a reason because it did crawl out in the US, but in the UK and indeed Japan, they just didn't bother. To be fair, they barely bothered in the US. The Last Action Hero was delayed until the video release of the movie in 1994, when the film's failure was already known. Presumably feeling this alone wouldn't ruin sales of the game enough, they didn't let you actually buy it. Improbably, The Last Action Hero on Genesis and the ugly version of the Super Nintendo was a rental exclusive for 7 months. By the time it was released to keep, at least no one would be able to plead ignorance of the game itself. Still, for the mostly UK audience of this fair channel, that makes it a rarity, and rarities are always worth having a look at. The plot is reasonably simple. A 10-year-old action movie fan with movie-friendly issues in his personal life is watching the latest Jack Slater movie in the cinema when he is dragged into the film and teams up with Jack to do action movie stuff, eventually returning with him to the real world. The irony here is, because Last Action Hero is a 15 certificate, the most unrealistic part of the entire movie is Danny being able to watch it in the cinema in the first place. This is explained in the intro, which ends with our hero landing in the street next to Jack Slater, starting the game with Arnie? Is this Arnie? It's not going to be a 10-year-old, but it's not like it looks more like Arnie than the average 10-year-old. And so begins a generic beat-em-up. You'll notice that despite fake Arnold here being a US cop well known for loving guns, and the film involving more guns than Arm Day at the local gym, there are none to be seen. The story goes that despite Arnold refusing to let his own face be in the game, he also felt entitled to insist it have no guns or other weapons, because
if children are constantly subjected to these violent images on the screen, they will identify with the violence and project it through to their real lives.
Luckily, beating the living snot out of random people on the street does not count as violence, and knives apparently do not count as weapons. So don't worry folks, when you get stabbed you can thank Arnold Schwarzenegger. You might wish for it after 5 minutes playing this. It's absolutely awful. The first level repeats the same 2 enemies in the same empty section over the same generic cars. Jack's got 2 moves, Weak Punch and Slow Roundhouse Kick, neither of which seem especially effective. You'll struggle to even find this out though, because your action hero avatar moves like he's, well, as old as Arnie is now. Most notably, turning round isn't so much slow as the character just doesn't bother trying until you pressed it about 8 times. In the meantime, you've been non-violently punched and non-lethally stabbed into oblivion. Any sane person gives up at this point. Any sane person does not want to play this game. I don't want to play this game, and yet I must. So we go looking for cheats, and luckily the infallible AI summary is here to tell us that there are no cheats for the Genesis version, but there are for the Sega CD version. Except that the Sega CD version was cancelled, and also there are cheats for the Genesis version. Superb. Even the cheat is irritating. You walk to in front of the first police car and then hold 3 buttons down at once for 30 seconds, the end of which is not acknowledged. This gives you both a level skip and invulnerability, so let's see what delights are on board for the persistent sadist. Delights is perhaps pushing it. I'll skip the other 50% of this intro stage because it's identical to the first 50% and move on to what I think is supposed to be a school. The kind of school with about 50 different lift banks for some reason. Also, the faculty appears to be the identical twins of all the enemies from outside, with the exception of some blokes in jackets who throw Molotov cocktails they probably made in the science lab. Molotov cocktails also do not count as weapons, it seems. The actual gameplay does not change at all. I do not know how anyone would have the strength to get through this honestly. I didn't even get through it dishonestly the first time. My cheat, while making me invulnerable, does not stop the clock, and on my first attempt I still ran out of time before reaching the end, despite not losing anything at all to being hit. It's really tight. The mid-level restart point does at least reset the timer, allowing me to finish. Which does let us try out the game's one other trick, the car chase levels, which are presented in a fashion that would make Excitebike think was a bit simple. You speed along the road, you try to avoid the other cars and, more importantly, the lorries, which will result in instant death no matter how much health you have. As an added bonus, your invulnerability cheat will not work on this level. They can't even program a cheat right. It's immensely overlong and frustrating, with gameplay at the mercy of luck and memorization rather than anything that could possibly be perceived as skill. You don't appear to have any useful tools for fighting back even. Exactly how it ends, I don't know because I eventually skipped it. The next level, and the last I could force myself to try, introduces a single extra enemy. This lovely chap with his gun. Wait a second. I thought this game didn't have guns. There were some guys with guns in the car chase level too, but they didn't appear to fire, and some of what certainly looked like bullets that invaded while I was trying to do the cheat. There's a great quote from the developer on the wiki page that says that the lack of guns didn't cause them any challenges designing the game, and I would have to concede that as a true statement, mainly because they didn't bother. The fact I've seen no one call them out on this in the last 30 years tells you exactly how much of this travesty anyone has ever bothered to play. I don't know what's past this. Even with invulnerability, this level is just a maze, and the doubling of the time limit from the previous one should perhaps have been a clue. The killer, though, is that the invulnerability cheat does not protect you from fall damage, and with the controls of this game having the crispness of damp spinach, I do a lot of falling. It probably won't shock you that this game did not review super well. The only in-period Genesis review I can find anywhere is from an Australian magazine called Hyper. They gave it 9%. To calibrate that for this particular magazine, one of the god-awful Make My Video titles for Mega CD gets 58 in the same section. Their opener to the review is,
"There's a very good reason why this game was in the shops before any magazine in the world had a chance to review it. Fear."
and ends with,
"Don't buy, rent, steal, or even look at this game. You'll go blind. At the very least, you'll lose your faith in the wonders of video games."
I should probably have read this in advance. The existence of this game in the UK only on SNES might be the single biggest argument for Mega Drive superiority I've ever heard. Hindsight is a wonderful thing for these magazines. Take the news section. Sometimes the story that'll change gaming forever is buried in the middle behind a bunch of stuff everyone has forgotten. A splendid example of that occurs in this issue, as confined to a corner of page 7 is the news that Sony has bought UK publisher Psygnosis. It's a measure of how much the PlayStation took people by surprise that a year out from its Japanese launch and 2 from the UK, the story doesn't mention the possibility of a console at all. Instead, the focus is on how worldwide distribution will help Psygnosis sell its games, and how Sony ImageSoft will benefit from having a developer on board who can help right the variable quality of their previous offerings. It wouldn't help on the Master System, where the main result of the collaboration was 2 of the highest profile completed but never released games on the system. Both these were developed by broadly the same team at Spidersoft, a fitting punishment for some tier text level conversions of Pinball Dreams and Fantasies. It gets worse. The publisher who so comprehensively buggered up the last Action Hero game, its US release, and who failed to release the Mega Drive version in the UK at all, Sony ImageSoft. The equally abysmal Amiga version was published by Psygnosis. Things sorted themselves out, of course, at least briefly. When the PlayStation did appear, Psygnosis, along with Namco, were probably the 2 biggest reasons for the console's success. Wipeout, Destruction Derby, F1, Roll Cage, G-Police and Discworld were mainstays of the first couple of years of Sony consoles, and also Spice World was there. After that, an inevitable decline. Psygnosis' independence and then their very existence were squeezed, corporatized and ruined just like so many acquisitions before them. The last games with a Psygnosis credit are Wipeout 3, Team Buddies and Destruction Derby Raw in 2000. The remains of Psygnosis became SCE Studio Liverpool, and after a decade of essentially being an F1 and Wipeout farm, they were unceremoniously closed in 2012. Sega Force Mega know none of this, of course, considering this deal on a par with Sony's distribution agreement in Europe with Tech Magic. In fact, one of the 2 stories SFM think is more important than the one that made Wipeout possible is the first shots from 2 Tech Magic games, the future of console gaming being assured by the twin guns of the Pink Panther and Sylvester and Tweety. Both games, they assure us from the screenshots, are looking great. Panther has a style, I guess, but really only Colour Depth tells you the Sylvester shot isn't from a Master System game. Savour them though, because they also represented the 2 last games Tech Magic ever released. Getting involved with Sony is dangerous. I've owned Sylvester for 20 years, and it's only reading this news story that caused me to take it off the shelf and realise it was a Tech Magic game at all. The fact I paid $1.99 for it probably serves as the epitaph. More unrealised potential in the top story. Sega's Mega Drive VR headset has a release date just 2 months from now at a price of just $200, which is apparently £300. Needless to say, that was even less the exchange rate then than it is now. Raising further questions is the prospect of doing a VR headset in 1993. VR, when done right, is easily the best gaming you'll find, especially when that involves piloting a vehicle. Nothing beats visibly strapped into a car, entering the TARDIS, or actually leaning round a corner to sneak up on a badnik. But even now, headsets are still a little big and machines need all the power they can muster, as one of the big causes of discomfort in VR is frame rates falling below 90. Yes, 90. In a world where we're lucky to get 60 in flat screen games that are only having to render one screen, not two. If there's a single Mega Drive game that runs at 90 frames a second, I've never played it. What would be the point? Screens that could display it would probably cost more than your house. The glow from the upbeat preview lasts 5 pages, because by page 11, they've managed to go head on. And the luster has failed quicker than the lining of my pants when I encountered Doctor Who's Weeping Angels in VR. Because of course they will do VR by not doing VR. The Mega Drive VR system uses a system of rapidly opening and closing shutters, meaning that the machine simply renders screens from 2 perspectives on alternate frames, which your eyes will see as a single picture at probably 15 frames a second, giving the illusion of depths. If this sounds familiar, it should, because this is exactly how Sega did the Master System 3D glasses 5 years earlier to mild success at best. The effect is crude, but even now effective, assuming you have the CRT-based TV it requires. But what it's not is VR, although the Genesis version supposedly used head-mounted screens and could at least do some motion tracking. Which is probably where the issue emerges. Sideways movement in VR at 15 frames a second is a recipe for immediate chundering, and while we only have rumours about the reason for the cancellation, virtually all of them imply that the demo room probably had to be cleaned up with a Domestos grenade. Nintendo made a not dissimilar discovery a couple of years later, of course. The Virtual Boy was supposed to be what they call a 4 Degrees of Freedom headset too, but they chickened out in favour of the tabletop format they eventually used, which of course caused people even more headaches and was a huge failure. More interesting is the charts page, not for the UK Top 10 itself, which is led by Super Kickoff, an appalling conversion of an overrated game that was somehow still the Mega Drive's best football game for about another 2 months before FIFA and Sensible arrived near simultaneously. Instead, we're interested in the promise that some of the top 10s from the US and Japan will be released in the UK in 32 years' time. 32 years after 1993? That's now. Only one of the US chart didn't get a UK release in as timely a fashion as ever happened in the early 90s, and that's Parker Brothers' version of Monopoly, which isn't a huge loss, especially as Nexus' charming SMS version could of course be made to work on your Mega Drive. Force Mega are technically close though. Ubisoft thought we needed a new version of Monopoly on PC just last year. We didn't. We get even closer immediately in the Japanese section, where their number 1, Puyo Puyo, is published by Sega, who last year themselves released Puyo Puyo Puzzle Pop on mobile formats. Doesn't really count because in the UK this exact release would appear early the next year as Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. Of the other obscurities, Mazen Saga was already out in the UK, but no one cared. Annette Again is a poor translation of Japanese exclusive Annette Futatabi. I am 90% certain Wolf and Deer is actually the game known in North America as Genghis Khan 2 Clan of the Grey Wolf, but either way, we never saw it. Same for Dream Thief, which again I'm only mostly certain is Doraemon Yume Drobo to 7 Nin no Gozans, which presumably has taken 32 years just to successfully type into the retailer's systems. And finally, World League Soccer is actually World Trophy Soccer, or more to the point, the long-released European Club Soccer, a game very nearly better than Super Kickoff. Nice try, but no cigar, Sega Mega Force futurists. More interestingly, Sega Mega Force have a competition. Produce a game design idea, and Imagitech will turn it into a commercial Mega Drive game and pay you a share of £10,000 for it too. That's a whole £5,000 or £2,500 depending on your place for a game Imagitech presumably want to sell a few 100,000 copies at £40 of. I can't wait to see what games come out of this, and Sega Force Mega promises to follow the progress of them right through to review. I sense just a little scepticism from the room. Or the cat's farted again. In reality, there wasn't a lot of time. There's only another 6 issues of Sega Force Mega before the publisher goes under, and the 6-week deadline for entries to come in is going to account for 3 of those immediately. A look at Imagitech's game releases suggests no likely candidates. They'd already released their last Mega Drive game, and nothing in future has a game design credit for a first-timer. My Sega Force Mega collection is not entirely complete, but as far as I can tell, no one ever mentioned the whole endeavour again. The reviews are not a convincing bunch this month. You're thinking Ninja Warriors looks like another unconvincing Mega Drive beat-em-up, for instance, and you're dead wrong. It's somehow an unconvincing Mega CD beat-em-up. Please spend £300 on extra hardware to plug into your Mega Drive, and then buy this. I can't imagine why CD was a hard sell at this time. It doesn't help the other 3 CD releases in this magazine follow this pattern. Hook and Chuck Rock are both just the cartridge releases with upgraded music and pointless FMV. Batman Returns at least attempts a mild warming over with some new 3D sections, but welcome as they are, the SNES owners would point out it's not a big step from Mode 7. The magazine follows that one up with a game we've seen before, Chester Cheetah Too Cool to Fool. Also never released in the UK, and that's also a good thing. It's a desperately average game, mostly constructed to advertise cheese-adjacent snacks, and if that's your aim, maybe play Pushover and One Step Beyond, both of which are decent. Then all we have is your RDA of licensed platformer, in X-Men, the too clever for its own good David Crane's Amazing Tennis, and Taito's near-forgotten NHL challenger Hit the Ice, which at 50% should be the lowest score in the issue, but it isn't. The early 90s represents a brief period where environmentalism made it to the mainstream, especially in children's media. McDonald's produced the platformer Global Gladiators around this time. Meanwhile, in the real world, a programme of rapidly improving the environmental impact of countries began, which repaired the ozone layer and dramatically reduced the emissions of cars, factories, and gigantically improved the air quality in most cities. This lasted for about 25 years until a bunch of old twats decided the whole thing was a hoax that wasn't quite making them enough money, and now we're all buggered. In the middle of this, a kids' cartoon series, Captain Planet and the Planeteers. Plot-wise, Gaia has woken up after a 100-year nap, possibly the most relatable part of this whole episode, and has discovered that a century of industrialisation has gone less well for her than she'd hoped. Her solution to battling pollution is to send 5 rings to 5 kids around the world. I'd have gone with an integrated clean renewable energy program and rapid developments in electric vehicles myself, but Gaia knows best. Our heroes are Kwame with the power of the earth, Wheeler with the power of fire, G with the power of water, and Linker with the power of wind. And yet she's not got the worst one, because Marty, having run out of elements, gets the power of heart. And yes, I put in that entire paragraph for a fart joke. I regret nothing. If 5 random children is somehow not enough to immediately solve global pollution, they can combine their powers, Ranger style, to form Captain Planet, who somehow sorts stuff out despite the fact his one weakness is, short-sightedly, pollution. The history is interesting. There was an original NES version, but it had been received incredibly poorly, and thus the Mega Drive version had been cancelled. Or rather, the Genesis version had been cancelled because in a surprise callback reveal narrative twist, in this case the game only got a release in the countries that can spell colour correctly. It's a different game though. Rather than a conversion of the NES game, they chose to make a new and original one for the Sega Mega Geni. Weirdly, for such an important game to get right, and that had already been cancelled once, they chose a developer with very little home console experience in Nova Logic, later well known for innovative flight sims, but at this stage responsible for just a few conversions of Taito arcade games to the less interesting home computers. Yes, we're riling up the Apple II fans again. What of it? Not no home console experience, however, for Nova Logic had previously finished a movie tie-in. But in the world of 1993, virtually no one who could potentially be a customer for Captain Planet had played it. For while Planet is a PAL-exclusive Mega Drive title, Rocketeer somehow managed to be an American exclusive on SNES. Don't be jealous of those 15 people in the UK with both a SNES and Mega Drive as well as an import adapter for the SNES. because if they paid import prices for the game based on a relatively charming Disney live-action movie, they would have been really annoyed at a fundamentally broken collection of minigames that doesn't understand its source material. Since this is a Sega episode, let's just tackle 2 issues with it. Firstly, my comment just now. The basic plot of the Rocketeer movie is that your hero comes into possession of a unique prototype jetpack, and that everyone from the Nazis to the US government wants it. In the game, there is an entire level where you are attacked by virtually nothing other than people in other, identical jetpacks, as you can see in this footage from SNES expert Super Jim. Why are they attacking you in the first place? The game doesn't know. For the second, it's just an example of impossibly awful game design, and to illustrate it, I'll leave you in the capable hands of Jim himself for a minute.
All falls apart from stage 1, where it sees you flying the GB plane from the movie. Round in circles. Endless, boring circles. So you try to win the race, but it's a massive trap. Ignore the entire screen, except for this little box at the bottom in the middle. You need to stay to the left, but you can't really do that staring at the rest of the screen, it puts you off. I know, let's fix it. They should include this cutout in every copy.
So the vibes, as the kids say, are not good. Captain Planet doesn't have any truck with the concept of lives. You have 60 minutes to finish the whole thing, but there are no restart points in those levels, so Prince of Persia style, every restart is wasted time. Initially, you have 4 of those levels to do, mostly tasks in the kid has been kidnapped genre. There is 1 level per kid and then an Our Powers Combined finale. So one thing to know already is this is a very short game. We can prove this by starting the first level, where to rescue Kwame your task is to destroy 5 computer screens hidden in the level. Level being quite a generous description here. You'll see a monitor in a minute, it's the simple red looking TV screen thing. On the way there though, there's 2 additional threats to contend with. Platforms are shot on a timer by the coloured ceiling things in turn, and also there's some yellow spaceship bastards who'll sometimes track you down. All these things can be destroyed, although for the spaceship bastards you're probably best spamming your special weapon, for which they also drop a little ammo. They will shoot you at least once in this sequence though, which it doesn't seem can be avoided by either jumping or ducking. You could possibly rapidly travel between platforms firing a shot at a time, but chances are in that sequence you're going to get caught by one of the ceiling gits anyway, so spamming is the order of the day. Ceiling gits will no doubt be hanging around, because while it's possible to destroy a lot of them shooting up from the lower platforms, if you need to shoot sideways it can only be done by timing it on a jump, which is needlessly tricky to do thanks to the dodgy controls. A skilled player though could get through this entire level virtually unscathed, which is where the time comes in, because clearing yourself a path is incredibly time consuming, and the temptation is not to do, giving an interesting risk-reward mechanic to the level. While it's pretty clear already this game is awful, I'm not hating it. Maybe I'm just glad to not still be playing Last Action Hero, which had less effort put into it than the design of this Yesterzine souvenir mug, but there's signs here someone gave a shit. This level, for instance, if refined a little, would be a pretty good Spectrum budget game premise. Of course, that'd also be £1.99 instead of the roughly a tenner worth of the price it's taking up. Let's see how it goes elsewhere. We go for level 2, where Linka has to escape from some kind of sewer-based power plant thing, using her power of wind. I thought I was stretching with the fart gag earlier, but they put her straight into a situation associated with a high methane level. It does cause me to notice something I missed earlier. I knew the super attack cost you power, but it seems your normal attack also does, which seems incredibly mean. It's important here because there are constantly roaming ships that'll attack you relentlessly. Destroying them will cost you power however you do it, and unlike the previous level, I have yet to figure out how to regain any. If you run out of power, then your ability to shoot slows to a crawl. This level, therefore, is the worst kind of misleading difficult platformer. The silver pipes are the only ones that are solid, thankfully including the bullets of your enemies, but you will be assaulted from all sides by things that will just chip away at your energy, including the vents, the ship, the drills, and even just contact with the water. All this could just about work if the controls did, but even more noticeable than on the last level is how they don't. They're awkward and unresponsive at exactly the times you don't want them to be in a level that requires you to move quick to avoid damage, even if you're choosing to ignore that overriding 1 hour time limit on the entire game. And when the controls are responding, the screen display isn't. It's noticeable when playing even the first section, but once you go up the lift and enter the second phase, it becomes critical. There's a lot of moving platforms which can somehow shoot you, and some neatly placed oil sprays to stop you doing exactly what I'm doing and trying to cheese the entire level. Further in though, the dickhead ship is back, also shooting, and the game slows to an absolute crawl just as you really need to maintain pinpoint accuracy because half the screen is bullets while you're trying to get on a tiny platform to get to the next obstacle. Even in a perfect world, you'd need spot on timing to get through this section, but I don't think you could avoid taking damage entirely. Oh look, it's another sewer level. Except this time even more sewery. This time starring the kid with the brown power. It gives me a chance to point out another issue with this game. Configuring the controls doesn't work. You're supposed to be able to move, jump, shoot and special to any of the 3 buttons, but on my copy it has no effect. This fools me every time. The power drain is important in this level too, as the sewers you have to traverse to shut down the 4 sewer pipes are infested with rats and slowly filling with water. The valves you require are situated 2 each in 4 pump rooms. You realise after a while the easiest way to track these down is to follow where the green goop is coming from. Of course, like that time your mum spent Christmas with the Paltrows, the goop flow is near constant. There's no avoiding it other than the game wasting yet more of your time waiting for at least a minute any time you want to make any progress at all, or just to power through it and take some damage. The valves do drop health and something I'm really going to hope is just earth, so it's possible to survive. You'll be bored though. The problem is the entire sewer is made of about 5 tiles, all of which look the same, so there's no real way to know where you are or where you haven't been. The rats, of course, will keep coming either way, costing you at least one of your 2 resources and forcing you into following the goop again, continuing to cost you time or health. If you're careful and at least partially ignore the time thing, there's no real challenge here, and we know that's true because this one even I easily got through after a couple of goes. When you finish the last valve, one of the series' big bads appears, and then you're dragged out of the sewers to fight them in their cute little helicopter. And genuinely, this fight shouldn't be bad. The enemy is challenging, but not dreadful. He can be avoided. The mini-level design does give you options, and the game is clear that the object is to destroy the 3 specific parts of the vehicle. The issue, of course, is again power, because you simply don't have enough of it to destroy the boss, and once you run out, your weapon goes from splitting all before it to being akin to trying to get the last bit out of the can of squirty cream. It's doable, although not by me before I get bored, but it turns what could have been a great one-on-one battle into a tedious trudge fest of a boss fight. As I begin the final level, the stage is rather set. This will have a collection of the problems we've seen in the other levels, and since I made a habit of introducing a new problem, this seems like a good time to point out that while all the controllable characters have supposedly different powers, they don't. Kwame's earth power does exactly the same in the same way as Link has wind or James's fire. It's a huge missed opportunity to do something with the concept. You'll have noticed only 4 of the characters are playable because even in game form they didn't think they could come up with a useful representation for Marty's power of heart. We don't need to deconstruct this level. You need to destroy 6 things, which is a huge drain on your power. You need to make accurate jumps, which is exactly what these controls are bad at. There's surprise enemies on the platform to make sure you spend some life doing literally anything, and of course the whole traversal is gated by the speed of the platforms, meaning the game can safely cost you some time, which is really your only currency anyway. This game isn't good. You should not play this game. For £40 it'd be insultingly short. Those more competent than me would easily rinse it in an afternoon, I suspect, once they learn the vagaries of the way the game is determined to mess with you. It's not pretty enough, playable enough, or imaginative enough to be worth a second glance as an item on your legal emulator device of choice. The problem is, it's the best game we've played today. It basically functions as a game, which Last Action Hero frankly doesn't. Its 4 levels are distinct and varied, whereas the only noticeable change in Last Action are the car chase levels that have the playability of an LCD game, without batteries. It's better than the Rocketeer too, not least because it doesn't waste 2/5 of its runtime on a section where only 10% of the screen is relevant to your progress. Once you know those 2 are the same developer, the game design philosophy is surprisingly similar too, despite both being released exclusively in regions and on machines the other wasn't. In any case though, I'm disturbingly aware we're at the end of an episode of a show designed to recommend you games to play if you've never played them before, telling you to stay well away from all 3 of the games it covered. So we flipped through the magazine to find something. Anything. And just after a slightly embarrassing playing guide for Captain Planet, which they literally just gave 45%, we find in the minigame gear section a review of the excellent Land of Illusion. Choose the Master System version of course, but go play that and leave me alone to count the time I lost to 3 wastes of a cartridge. On the back page, if there's one thing we've learnt this month, it's that despite it being about as popular as the hummus tent at the Great British Steak Festival, the Virtual Boy wasn't as bad as gaming got. And to be fair, there are some good Virtual Boy games, especially the entertaining Wario platformer. If only there were a way to play them that didn't lose the incredible sense of depth from the stereoscopic 3D, but also didn't cost the several £100s a Virtual Boy does these days. Well, there is. Actually, there's 2. Firstly, you could just go to our friends at the RMC Museum in Stroud, where they have a lovingly preserved Virtual Boy for you to have a go on. That, though, still has the dramatic downside of causing your head to fold inside out if you use it for more than about 10 minutes. Instead, should you be lucky enough to own a name brand VR headset, can I recommend Virtual Boy Go for Oculus Quest, a lovingly produced emulator for the machine you can play in the relative comfort of your modern high frame rate VR device and not hunched over a table like you're cleaning it for auction. You'll need the SideQuest app to do it, but it's free and available at sidequestvr.com. If you've never played a Virtual Boy, you owe it to yourself to find out what the hype would theoretically have been if Nintendo hadn't screwed it all up at the last minute. And speaking of screwing it all up at the last minute, next month is the holy month of Doscember. Will we be covering another pre-Windows era PC magazine, or do I have a clever surprise planned? The only way to find out is to subscribe to this channel and wait 4 weeks. Or ask me, I'll probably tell you. Good night.